Ok, salut și bine ați venit la prima ediție a Ruby Romania Meetup în Sibiu. Eu sunt Alex și vă voi prezenta câteva detalii organizatorice. În primul rând, ce vrem să facem? Noi vrem să creștem vizibilitatea Ruby în România, împreună cu Adrian, Ștefan, Lucian, Iacob. Încercăm să facem cumva să fie mai cunoscut limbajul. Și agenda de astăzi vor fi 2 prezentări, după care vom putea sta la networking, la pizza, sucuri și după aia o să fie și un pub, nu ne-am decis încă, dar o să vedem. Am vrea să le mulțumim partenerilor locali care ne ajută să organizăm acest meetup, Sibiu IT Cluster și Sibiu Web Meetup. Mulțumim de asemenea și celor de la Tu Performant care ne ajută să organizăm aceste meetup-uri. În continuare, Adrian ne va vorbi despre Rails Renaissance.
Mulțumesc. Mulțumesc. În primul rând, este cineva care... Is there anybody that speaks only English? Ok, cool. Înainte să încep prezentarea, aș vrea să văd cam cine este în sală și aș vrea să vă pun câteva întrebări, cine se simte ok să răspundă. Cine este programator aici? Ok, cool. Cine face Ruby day to day? Ok, foarte interesant. Cine este programator de mai bine de 5 ani? Ok, that's super, mulțumesc. Cine nu știe engleză aici? E perfect pentru că prezentarea mea va fi în limba engleză. Ok, cool. Thank you for being here. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Rails was, how was it in the back in the day, how it is right now, and why I think we're living in a Rails renaissance. Everything started in about 2004 when the DHH, the creator of Rails, presented this wonderful video of how to create a blog in 15 minutes. Apparently, it was very difficult to create a blog back then. This really set Rails up as it showed how productive it can be with a lot of simplicity. It has convention over configuration and RESTful routing, which weren't really mainstream back then. But then JavaScript came along. I remember it was really swanky, really nice to have things updated on the screen without reloading the page, text being reloaded and everything. I really love that. If you remember maybe Backbone or Underscore, maybe the people that used to do it before, jQuery, of course. And then Angular came along, Vue.js, React, and everybody else. I think, and this is a personal opinion, I think that us as engineers, we love problems. We love to have a problem to solve. And with this new this new way of building applications, we have many problems. Like if you take from the browser's perspective, you have to take state, you have to maintain it somewhere when building SPAs, when building with JavaScript. You have to maintain it, you have to move state around, you have to take care of page navigation, of caching, of server-side, of client-side hydration. All of these are problems that monolithic frameworks fixed before. And that's just on the browser side. If we talk about the framework, suddenly when you need to build authentication, you need to build it from scratch for every project or use a service. If you need caching, you need to build it from scratch for every project or use a service. If you need file storage, you need to build it from scratch, or you get the point. So it was productivity became something of a second-class citizen. Still, around then, companies started embracing this technology and started raising millions of dollars to fix these problems, to try to build tooling around them, and to build infrastructure. And again, productivity levels went down. We really unsolved some of the problems that tools like Rails and monolithic frameworks solved before. We didn't have these problems. But I didn't tell you anything about myself. My name is Adrian. I am a self-taught engineer for about 13 years. I like to build products from 0 to 1. I've worked in digital agencies as a freelancer, in corporations, in a Silicon Valley startup. As I said, I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, and my latest product is Avo. It's a custom content management system built for Ruby on Rails. So it helps developers build CRUD applications really, really fast. You can find me, Adrian the Dev, everywhere on every platform. The year was 2016. I got hired at a YC startup. It was really swanky. They were building e-commerce products, and they needed some help, and they were using Rails. The first application that I touched, it was a 5.0. I made the first upgrade to 5.1, 5.2, 6, 6.1, and so on. And in the span of like 3 years, I was really amazed that we didn't have too many updates. We had, Yarn support, Webpacker, Redis cache. It wasn't a lot. Like, we could have had more. And I think right around that time, people started to ask actually if Rails is dead. People that weren't building with Rails, that weren't building with Ruby, were saying things that Rails doesn't scale. And this is a tweet from Shopify Engineering, which runs on Rails. After their Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they had 99.999 uptime, and they transferred a lot of data. So it can scale. They said that companies, that nobody uses it. These are very big companies that actually use Rails. They said that it's a thing of the past, and we definitely know that it isn't. And sometime around 2020, at the end, DHH, the framework creator, presented Hotwire, which was a cool, new, innovative way to build dynamic front-end applications without using JavaScript, or very, very little. With just the help of stimulus controllers, I'm not going to go into details, very, very little JavaScript, and you can build very dynamic front-end applications. And we can see that now, in the current period, many frameworks and many developers are kind of gearing toward that, are hinting that, hey, maybe building everything on the client side wasn't such a good idea. And we have frameworks like HTMX and every other big framework on different development programming languages like Phoenix, Elixir Phoenix, Livewire, and Stimulus Reflex. They all bank on this thing that you can build high dynamic front-end dynamic applications without too much JavaScript. And the present. We celebrated last year 20 years of Rails, which is amazing. In JavaScript land, it's cool if you have like 5 years lifespan for a framework, or 3 years without a major rewrite. And I just want to point out, like, what do you think all of these have in common? Angular, React, Go. They are all backed by huge corporations. They funnel huge amounts of money into marketing, into developing tooling. And last year, we had something similar happen to Rails as well. The Rails Foundation was created. Things moved fast. Amanda Perino is the executive director of the Rails Foundation. There are 8 core members, 8 founding members, each contributing $1 million for its creation and $50,000 per year. 5 contributing members, which I think they contribute $25,000 per year. So that's about like $500,000 per year just to help spread the word about Rails. It has 8 board members, DHH is chairman, and it has 4 pillars. First is documentation, which is maybe not very friendly for people that are just starting out, and they maybe are not very up to date all the time, and this is something that they are improving. Education, again, if you Google something about Rails, you might find a 15-year-old video telling you how to do that. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not the right solution. Marketing, again, we are fighting with big companies which put their technologies in people's faces, and of course we need to try to do the same. And they have started this with the job board, and they built a documentary for Rails. And the events, and this is probably the most prominent pillar, prominent thing that they have worked on. So Rails World is a conference, a yearly conference. Last year was the first one. It was in Amsterdam with about 700 people. The tickets sold out in 45 minutes, which is amazing for a dead framework. It even hosted an Ask Me Anything session with 10 of the 12 core Rails members, core contributors. This year is going to be in Toronto at the end of September. Cool, let me tell you a little bit about Rails 8 and what it is bringing to the table. So first of all, solid cache. It's a new caching, service which relies on SQLite. So you can drop Redis or Memcached as a dependency. You can run it on your own server. Solid queue, which is a queuing service, again, backed by SQLite. I think we see a pattern here. Again, we are losing some dependency. So fewer dependencies means less complexity. We are taking hold more of the stack. So before we had only the framework, the server framework, we had Hotwire. So we have taken over the client side. And now we're taking over some more layers. So solid cache and solid queue. CSS bundling and JS bundling, it enables you to build CSS and JavaScript really, really fast using ES-Build. Import maps. This is a cool technology brought to you by browsers where instead of bundling your JavaScript and sending it into one file, you can just send it all, and with some tiny glue, some configuration, it just knows where everything is. And now with the new HTTP 2, where you don't have to, you don't have to take care of how many connections, how many files you're downloading, it's all working out so great. Again, we're going into this no-build paradigm. So you don't have to take care to build your project before deploying it. You can just deploy it. As probably some of you know, probably like we did before with FTP. It's just super, super quick. Of course, don't deploy with FTP. Use modern techniques. Cool. PropShaft, it's going to be, it's the replacement for Sprockets. Sprockets did a lot. It compressed some files. It made sure to do some transformations. That PropShaft is going to be so easy and lightweight for your app to just serve the files and apply a hash digest. View transitions. You can see how we can have native animations, native-like animations on the web. So everything is just in a browser. So this is something that Hotwire 8 is going to launch with. Kamal for deployment. Has anybody used Capistrano before? Okay, a few people, a few core Ruby developers. It's all good. Capistrano is a command runner, essentially, that helps you deploy applications. It just runs command after command, automating the deployment of your app. And it used to do that through SSH. Kamal is essentially Capistrano, but for Docker. So it builds your images, your containers, it deploys them, it manages them. It's really, really cool to have like an alternative to the cloud hosting. And mobile development. Using Turbo Native for iOS and Android, developers can now, like web developers, can have their web app put in the App Store really, really quick, and then progressively enhance with Turbo Native and Strada and a few other gems. You can actually make an app that looks and feels like native using web technologies. I cannot talk about Rails without talking about the community, about the Ruby community. There are new educators out there. Super Rails, Yaro, he's making amazing materials, tutorials about all the new cool stuff that comes out in Rails. We have amazing publications like Hotwire.io and our Lucian's Short Ruby newsletter, which will tell you about everything that's happening in the community. Like Lucian is doing an amazing job. We have businesses like Avo, like Bullet Train, like Karafka, which are built around Rails, which proves that this is like a very, it proves that it's a very mature ecosystem. There's this website, rubyconferences.org. There are 22 conferences this year. About 6 of them are newer than 1 year. Last year, I'm proud to say that Europe has led the conference season, has had the most Ruby conferences than every other continent. And I want to shine the light a little bit on Friendly.rb. It is a conference that we have organized in Bucharest. We had about 130 attendees from 22 different countries. We had only maybe 20 Romanians there, so it was truly an international thing. We had very nice speakers like Xavier Noria, Jeremy Smith, Jason Sweat. So Rails was built from this idea of simplicity and productivity. And the new no-build paradigm, the fewer dependencies and less complexity, this just shows that that one developer can build an immense amount of value in a very minuscule time. Thank you so much. This is actually, Rails is actually the best one-person framework that can do it all. Thank you. Întrebări dacă aveți. Dacă v-am făcut curioși și sper că da.
Am fost curios. Ai zis mai devreme că caching-ul se face pe bază de SQLite.
Da.
Dar fi asta cam lent.
Este puțin mai lent decât Redis, dar este mai lent la scriere, dar poți să o păstrezi pe disc mai mult. Redis are flashing, le dă afară, poți să le păstrezi pe disc mai mult și în felul ăsta ești mai economicos long term. Și acum oricum toată lumea folosește SSDs și sunt super rapide. Adică viteza pe care o pierzi la conexiune la Redis, știi, dacă nu ai o conexiune super bună, dacă nu este colocat server și așa mai departe, o câștigi prin faptul că o ții pe ținut. Câștigi foarte mult, exact. Everything is plug and play, nu-ți mai trebuie încă un serviciu, un provider care să ai grijă, un server care ți-a picat și așa mai departe, știi? Da. Ok. Care este learning curve-ul, dacă mai ne ia uite cine zâmbește în spate. Poftim? Care este learning curve? Eu să repet. Care este learning curve-ul dacă ar vrea cineva să se apuce? Da. Păi am primit o întrebare. De fapt, am avut o discuție în spate înainte să începem cu Mihaela. Mihaela ne-a zis că ea a făcut Java și a venit să vadă cum este. Și a zis că înainte să vină aici, în seara asta, m-am uitat un pic pe sintaxă. Și zice, vai, dar cum vă descurcați fără system out și așa mai departe, cu atâtea puține cuvinte? Cum de faceți așa? Efectiv, Ruby este creat, limbajul de programare este creat să ofere productivitate, dar și fericire. Exact așa, tipul care a creat-o, creatorul este din Japonia și este puțin mai visător. În fine, el zice că este limbajul fericit, nu știu, în fine, să facă programatorul fericit. În fine, deci learning curve-ul pentru Ruby este super mic, iar pentru Rails, dacă cunoști pattern-ul MVC, Model View Controller, dacă ai mai făcut Laravel sau Spring, Java Spring sau whatever, este similar. Eu am venit din Laravel în 2016 când m-am angajat, nu știam Ruby deloc și cred că într-o lună de zile am început să fac upgrade-uri, să preiau totul. Deci nu a fost deloc. Și asta atunci, în 2016. Acum sunt atâtea materiale și tooling-ul a devenit extrem de bun și extrem de ușor. Multe chestii, de exemplu, tot Rails mi se pare că a inovat prin a avea generators pentru tot. Deci, efectiv, tot ce vrei să faci, poți să rulezi un generator și îți creează pentru tine. Este chiar fain. Te rog.
Cât de frustrantă poate să fie imaginea din spatele Ruby și Rails? Mă refer la, eu vin din background de Java și știu cum am făcut și cu Spring, cu tranzacții, cu entități, ierarhii, tot felul de chestii de genul. Deci, din punctul de vedere, cum ți s-a părut?
Foarte simplu, pentru că Rails ce are în plus, și asta povestesc tuturor, Laravel este super fain, am crescut cu el, whatever. Este mișto, dar îți dă ai foarte multe posibilități de branching out, da? Vorbim de patterns, da? Poți să faci services, repositories, poți să faci un milion de chestii, cum ai zis tu. Rails, pe de altă parte, îți oferă un Rails way. La început poate ți se pare puțin, dar eu vreau să ies un pic, dar dacă stai un pic pe el și faci, el nu are foarte multe, are controlere, niște views, modele, foarte puține configurări. Ce este fain este că aduci pe o aplicație 10 programatori care nu s-au întâlnit niciodată pe o aplicație de Rails și toată lumea știe unde sunt lucrurile. Dacă ai lucrat vreodată pe o aplicație de JavaScript, vei vedea că nu este deloc așa. Fiecare a făcut într-un mod diferit și chestia asta, pentru că există acest convention over configuration, avem convenții în care, ok, pentru asta folosim controllerul ăsta, pentru asta folosim model, pentru ce pattern folosim și avem toate lucrurile astea, este super productiv și este fix un breath of fresh air. Este super refreshing să lucrezi cu Rails. Da. Deci learning curve-ul, cum să zic, nu este inexistent, este ceva acolo, dar dacă ai făcut Java Spring, MVC, este Model View Controller, cât de basic se poate. Singura chestie pe care pot să spun este că Rails are foarte multă magie, îi spunem, pentru că în Ruby poți să faci foarte mult metaprogramming, poți să definești metode dinamic foarte ușor, nu zic că alte limbaje nu au, dar din cauza asta există foarte multă magie, se numește, și trebuie să înveți un pic acele convenții. Dar după ce le înveți, o să vezi că totul este spre ajutorul tău și spre ajutorul programatorului să se miște super repede. Curaj! Te rog! Da, tot.
Cât de greu este să faci o aplicație Ruby și Ruby on Rails proastă?
Întrebarea este cât de greu este să faci o aplicație Ruby și Ruby on Rails proastă. Pot să zic că e mai greu decât în alte limbaj. Eu vin din Laravel și mi-a plăcut, eu am crescut cu Laravel 3, am fost de super mult și este mai ușor să faci Laravel proastă. În Rails nu este așa de ușor să faci proastă, pentru că dacă te apuci acum să înveți Rails, te vei duce pe niște site-uri de videouri, de tutoriale, vei citi documentația și dacă vrei să faci ceva, sunt sigur că într-o oră vei avea ceva cât de cât acolo, știi? Și nu ai plecat pe drumuri aiurea, adică ai rămas pe Rails Way pentru că e destul de ușor de înțeles. Deci, dacă vreți să plecați cu ceva de aici, sper că v-am făcut curioși să faceți o încercare. Give it an hour. Dați-i o oră, două. Când vă gândiți să faceți, ar fi fain dacă ar fi un proiect să vedem toate barurile din Sibiu sau ce v-ați gândit voi să faceți. Încercați data viitoare să faceți cu Rails. Efectiv, take an hour or two și vedeți ce se întâmplă, știi? Pentru că s-ar putea să... Te rog.
Vreau să mă întreb o chestie. Nu știu dacă am înțeles bine cum
Da.
ai zis înainte, dar în metodologia pe care o folosești cu Rails este că nu faci nimic în JavaScript, ci faci totul server-side?
Poți să faci... Da. Poți să faci ceva de genul. Există un sistem în care tu scrii numai HTML sau poți să scrii cod de Ruby care generează HTML, da, cum scrii în orice. Și există un framework, există o suită de tool-uri pe frontend în care îți permite să faci foarte rapid să înlocuiești, să zicem, toată pagina, să înlocuiești o bucată sau când răspunzi de la server să faci 2-3 acțiuni care pot fi driven by JavaScript, poți să faci o acțiune să scrii în JavaScript. Hei, ia-mi chestia asta și pune aici div-ul ăsta, fă-l din roșu, verde sau whatever, sau poți să-i spui doar append și atâta tot, doar atât. Deci mai adaugă un comentariu. Ai putea. Exact. Da. Și, mă rog, toată suita asta este backed by WebSockets, poți să ai chestii live super ușor, îi spui la un model, ok, când este updatat, updatează-l și atâta tot. Și dacă ai făcut aplicația în Rails Way, se updatează singur, nu trebuie să mai bați capul. Adică sunt niște lucruri care, cum zic, nu prea eu personal le-am văzut nu le-am văzut în JavaScript, nu urăsc JavaScript, apropo de treaba asta, știu că poate că nu urăsc, mie îmi place, am și TypeScript, am lucrat foarte mult, dar vreau să zic că n-am văzut nivelul ăsta de productivitate și nivelul ăsta de convention over configuration, convenții, nicăieri. Și astea sunt, efectiv, le vezi o dată și wow, doar updatează-mă, perfect, am updatat un shop sau un produs, s-a făcut și sus acolo, fără să faci nimic. Și este incredibil de fain. Cool. Te rog.
Da, n-am deloc experiență și nu știu exact cum e structurat. Ce suport am pentru tooling de genul static code analysis, cum se face, și pentru scanare de vulnerabilități în libraries, că bănuiesc că folosești ceva.
Da. Întrebarea este ce suport este pentru scanare de vulnerabilități și static code analysis. Rails a făcut 20 de ani în trecut Ruby a făcut 30 de ani în trecut. Deci este un limbaj de programare destul de matur și modern. Există companii de gen GitHub și Shopify, să nu mai zic Tesla și foarte multe care folosesc aceste tool-uri și construiesc tooling pentru ele. De exemplu, Shopify acum construiește super mult tooling și infrastructură tocmai pentru chestia asta, să ajute să improve the developer experience. Dacă să-ți răspund la întrebare, da, Găsești suport în Dependable, de exemplu, pe GitHub, dacă ai vreo problemă, dacă, nu știu, dai push la ceva de cod, știe să-ți facă analiză pe cod, să îți facă highlight, adică totul în infrastructura lor. Adică nu este un limbaj de programare anonim care, ok, nu o să știe nimeni să folosească R sau mai știu eu ce, știi? Adică există tooling pentru toate chestiile. Există și static code analysis, avem și linters de toate felurile, și formatters și sunt o grămadă. Avem și standard. Dacă ați folosit JavaScript și ați folosit standard.js, există echivalentul de Standard.rb și care face linting și formatting foarte fain în Rails. Cool. Mulțumesc. Hai, te rog. Hai. Da.
Cât de greu e să faci un server, o aplicație out of the box? De exemplu, la Python ai cookie-cutter.
Da, da.
Până faci Docker-ul, toate microserviciile, te apucă.
Da, da. În Rails 8 o să avem, de fapt avem în Rails 7 și o imagine de Docker, dar by default ai dat Rails new, i-ai spus ce nume vrei să ai și după aia îi dai Rails server și îți ridică el server, îți ridică totul. E adevărat că pe local vrei să o faci pe Docker, primești suport și pentru Docker și ai imaginea prefăcută, dar, cum zic, este așa de faină experiența pe local, dacă nu ai cine știe ce și probabil la început nu o să ai, încât efectiv dai Rails server și în 3 secunde te duci pe localhost 3000 și ai acolo aplicația și începi să faci ce vezi în tutorial. Nu mai stai cu, ok, am prea multe pregătite și efectiv așa de faine. Mulțumesc, mai aștept întrebări, vă rog, după, cât mai stăm aici la socializare sau la bar, ar fi super. Și sper să încercați, să vă fi făcut curioși că Rails este fain. Mulțumesc mult!
Mulțumim mult, Adrian. În continuare, Alexandru Calinoiu, zis Călin, ne va povesti despre Ruby at Scale.
It's me. Okay, as I learned previously, you all know English, so I'll do my presentation in English. Apparently, this is trendy right now. Soon enough, it will be probably Russian or Chinese, we'll see. Okay, I'll talk to you guys about Ruby at scale, because there's this mentality that interpreted languages, if I'm saying interpreted languages, do you know what I mean? Okay. Like languages that don't compile into a binary are slow. You cannot build large applications with this type of languages. Okay, so let's see if that holds any truth to it, right? It all started from this tweet where people said, well, we've built the ticketing and the seat placing system in Rails. Apparently it worked for the Golden Globe. And there's a bunch of companies, as Adrian showed you already, that are using Rails, or Ruby, in a way. So they must know something, right? Because these are large companies. You're using GitHub probably every day as a developer, right? And it works most of the time. But I'm not going to talk to you about a fancy application out there in the cloud. I'm going to talk to you about an application that we're building here in Sibiu. It was committed like 24 minutes ago. Go to it if you don't believe me. I have the repo on my computer, right? About me a little bit. I'm Alexandru Calinoiu. People call me Calin. I wear many hats, but tonight I'm a software craftsman, and I represent Sibiu IT, the sponsor of this event. If you're a developer living in Sibiu, you should know there's Sibiu IT, a cluster where all the developer companies are gathering, and we organize fantastic events like the Tech Meetup, which you get in the same place every third Tuesday. There's my GitHub and my LinkedIn, whatever. Search me, you'll find me, or ask me. So let's start. Now, why am I talking to you about Ruby? Because I'm not an Apple fanboy or a Ruby fanboy, sorry. I've worked with a couple of languages. I worked with languages and I worked with them in production. So I'll go over a couple of languages and I'll tell you why I still prefer Ruby in some of the cases, right? So does this thing have a laser? Okay, so this is a C# example of writing a GraphQL endpoint, right? Look at this. This actually, I wrote this last weekend it was the hackathon for Code for Romania. If you don't know about these guys, you can check them out, Code for Romania. They do good stuff for Romania, but they write it in C#. So there's this little thing here where you try to write a GraphQL endpoint and you type and keep typing and you forget to end parentheses. Anyway, this is a GraphQL endpoint. This is the same thing in Ruby. You can read it out loud, right? It has a description, it has an argument, it has a type for the argument, it's required true, right? This is better. I'm not saying Ruby is better than C#. I'm saying this is nicer. I like it. I can live with this. JavaScript. I'm not allowed. I'm probably the first person that I'm banned in my own company to make fun of JavaScript. Because I was called in an HR meeting. I'm being too offensive to JavaScript. I'm upsetting the other developers. but you don't have to say anything. You just open the browser and you type stuff into it. You get stuff like this. Basic addition. What's this? Anti-array plus anti-arrays? Simply don't get it. There is hope for front-end development. If you actually want to do front-end development, I suggest you try this little language. It's fantastic. Go. I write a bunch of stuff in Go. I wrote a bunch of stuff in C#. I write a bunch of stuff in Go. It's a system language. I write mostly low-level code. In this case, I'm writing a bridge between Bitcoin and another blockchain called Libre. It's going to be launched pretty soon. But I write a lot of stuff into it. And it's cool. It's a cool system language. But you cannot write a beautiful, fast API like in Ruby. If I am to write a web application or an API, because I'm going to talk to you about an API, I'm still going to choose Ruby. Elixir. I write a bunch of stuff in Elixir. It's live now. There's an application called RASI, which is the first digital broker in Romania, insurance digital broker in Romania. Its backend is written in Elixir. I actually committed code right before this meeting. So it's nice, it scales, and it comes as in the life of a developer. At some point, you want to write functional. You want to use functional languages. When you'll get old like me, you'll know what I mean. But Elixir, it's a nice functional language, and it has a syntax. What attracted me to it is that the syntax is very similar to Ruby, but still, it's not that productive. It still compiles. It has those Bing files, and anyways, still Ruby is nicer to write. Okay, so let's if you wanna run functional, try Haskell, or try, if you want to do it in Ruby, try this library, dry Ruby. Well, it's a set of libraries. It's really cool. Let's talk about the streaming app. I'm going to talk to you about, because this is the main point of the talk. I'm going to talk to you about the streaming app, and it's a monolith application. It's written in Ruby. It has 360 REST endpoints. It has 18 GraphQL endpoints and 5 mutations. So it's a pretty large application, okay? So let's see what's all the, so that's like the high-level overview of it. It's pretty used. It has like around, like any streaming application, it has a peak during the weekends when it has about 2 million connections, concurrent connections at some point. So the part that's written in Ruby, it's the API that powers all the native applications. So you get native streaming applications on basically every screen, from mobile phones to cars, and they're all powered by this Ruby API here. It's easier for you if you picture something like Disney Plus or Netflix. This is the type of application that I'm talking about, right? So it has 2 million concurrent connections, right? And it surely must be slow, because Ruby is slow, right? It has like, the average endpoint response is 55 milliseconds of the API. That is true, right? You get peaks to 200 milliseconds, right? So that's the average, right? But you definitely have those 10 seconds endpoints there, right? Somewhere. No, not really. The slowest one that we have is 378 milliseconds, and I'll talk to you about it and what does it do, right? This is the top 25 slowest endpoint responses that we have by resource. So let's break down this big API endpoint that we have there, right? It's way complicated, don't try to understand it. But what I'm trying to tell you here, that in 300 milliseconds, we're doing, 245 milliseconds, we're doing a bunch of stuff, a lot of stuff is happening, right? So there's these big query things that are happening, and then all these small things here are queries to different data sources, maybe Redis or or the database MySQL. And then you have also these things that are other use cases that are touched, and they do other queries and so forth, right? So there's about like 40 to 50 queries that are happening in those milliseconds, and a bunch of business rules that are happening to update the user and so forth. And they all happen in 245 milliseconds. There were 1,000 of them by the time I managed to pronounce this sentence. And now there's somebody asking about syntax, how easy it is to write Ruby, right? And it's pretty damn straightforward, because you can actually read it, like I showed you previously in the GraphQL endpoint. This is actual code from the streaming application that I showed you previously. This is one of the endpoints that's actually comparable to that one. And what I like about Ruby is that I can write very beautiful DSLs in domain-specific languages, right? That I can express the business logic in plain words, right? I don't have to hide it between parentheses and accolades and ghilimele și punct și virgule. Sorry, I don't know how to say that in English. But you can get the gist of it, right? There's the ability to create a download, and you parse some parameters, you find the movie, because it's a streaming application, right? You find the playhead, which is the little thing that you get when the movie plays. You reset the playhead position, you get entitlements, that's a term like, does the user has the right to play this particular movie, to download this particular movie, and then you create a manifest, right? So this whole thing, it's really easy to read. And when we dig into all of these things, they're the same. They're very natural to read, and you can use the domain language into them. Don't worry, I'm not going into details about them. What I'm going to talk to you about is that I showed you the live performance in previous graphs, but we also have that this is how it behaves in the lab. So this is a performance test that we run. We have access to a secret, well, not secret, but internal AWS service. So we're able to spin large machines very fast. So we spin EC2 large instances, which have like, 10 GPUs and 60 gigabytes of RAM. So we spin 100 of them, and we try to flood our server to see how the API behaves, right? Because you can see in about 30 minutes, we run 3.80 million only on this 3.80 million requests only on this endpoint. So we run a very large number of requests against our server to see how it behaves, and it's good. About 50 milliseconds response time. It's, I would say, running really, really good. But then you must be thinking, okay, you guys have huge machines, like you have those servers with Xeon or whatever CPUs are cool now. Well, no, this is all Dockerized. The Docker image for the entire monolith that I showed you has 321 megabytes, right? This compared to the 227 megabytes that the teacher workout application that I showed you in the first code example. You can download it on the GitHub repo. This is a .NET application. It has 3 endpoints. 2 of them have mock data. And it produces a Docker machine of 227 megabytes. Okay? And these Docker images run on pods that have 1 CPU and 1 gigabyte of RAM. Okay? You can scale up 1 to 2 CPUs and 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, but by default, this is what an instance of the application that I showed you runs on, right? So then you're probably going like, okay, then you have millions of these instances. I got you there. Let me tell you about how it works, how it scales, and how it's deployed, right? I should have asked this in the beginning. How many are familiar with Kubernetes here? Hey, 3 people. well, we have Kubernetes. Well, Kubernetes is like it's an application that orchestrates pods, like little virtual machines. Those little virtual machines that I showed you here. These guys. Okay. So the way we did it is that we take our big application, 321 megabytes application, and we deploy it on different pods per functionality. So let me unpack this a little bit. So we will have the web pods. They will deal with a subset of requests. So everything that comes from the client applications, from the mobile applications, kind of reaches the API in these pods. Everything that happens in the background related to image processing, because there's a lot of image processing when it comes to movies, right? Posters and processing them, goes to the same image, the same code base, but in a different pod. So it's deployed in a different pod. Because it's so small and so compact, we don't care that, I don't know, 90% of the code base is not used in that pod. We don't actually care. We just deploy it there, and just the image part is used here. Same goes for background jobs and some other stuff. So to put this in other terms is that you have the same monolith application, and depending on who uses it, it might arrive, the usage might arrive in some machines versus other machines, basically. This is the poor man microservices architecture. but in all honesty, I worked with microservices, and I rarely met a microservice that's less than 300 megabytes, which is the image that we have here for this kind of software API. This is how it shows, this is how it looks, but it was going like, okay, so ignore all this stuff. The important thing is that you have this is the minimum number of pods, and pods being 1 CPU and 1 gigabyte of RAM. And this is the maximum number of pods. And this is the default one. This is when we start with this one, these numbers, right? And in our worst day, with the worst usage ever, we scaled up to 30. Well, 31. Okay, so we can scale up to 150, but we scaled up to 31. So you get like 30 CPUs and 30 gigabytes of RAM for all the streaming backend of this application. Because it's damn quick. You don't need more machines. What else? Uptime. Well, we're pretty good on the uptime also. 99.96%. There was this small alert. Now, you might be thinking, haha, got you there on 0.04%. but the way the application is architected, I showed you in previous slide, it allows us to, some parts of the application might fail, some pods might not work, and this is what happened here in the alert, basically. The heartbeats pods didn't work. But that, well, you don't know what that means, but it doesn't matter. The thing is that the experience for the user wasn't that bad. They actually, probably 99.96% of them didn't even notice any change because the application was working perfectly, only that the period where they were in the show didn't actually saved. So every time they played the video, it started from the beginning in the same position that they watched last. Not a big thing, and actually, because I know the industry, many of your streaming services will do the same thing. Netflix does the same thing. It turns off playheads when they have huge loads because it overloads their servers. Okay, and now, so this is a fast application. It runs on a small number of machines. It's written in Ruby. It's pleasant to write. You don't feel stressed, right? Probably the secret is that there's a huge team of geniuses behind it. Well, there are geniuses, but there are like 5 of them, and this guy is the DevOps. So these are the devs, and this is the DevOps, right? So like you have 5 people in the DevOps maintaining the application that I just showed you, right? And they have varying experience with it. This guy has 6 years experience with Ruby and 3 years experience working with this API. And the rest of them have less than a year experience, some of them in working with Ruby. Because you guys were asking previously how hard it is to write applications in Ruby and Rails. It's not that hard. But in every language it's complicated, right? But if you have the right mentorship, and then the language is friendlier enough, and the community is cool, and you have meetups with them, then all things get pretty smooth out. Things are getting faster. So the numbers that I showed you, the thing that we're running 42 minutes ago in production, it runs on Ruby 3.1. We run tests on Ruby 3.3, and we see 80% less CPU usage. We probably, I don't know if they give us CPUs that are not less than, probably want to make a pod with 0.5 CPU in less of 1. It has 20% improvements, around 20% performance improvements, different endpoints. And because it's faster, it dropped the number of concurrent connections to the database, which is an important metric at some point because of our architecture. At some point, we get limited by the database and the connection strings to the database. Yay! It ended. Guys have questions? If you don't have questions, you're not getting off easy because I'm asking you what's stopping you from using Ruby. Okay.
Do I have to ask in English or?
Nu, poți să zici în română de data asta, cred. Și trebuie să repete întrebarea, că repet întrebarea. Că de-abia m-am învățat de la Andrei să repete întrebarea. Așa.
Aplicația pe care ai prezentat-o mai devreme, ce volum de date este în query-urile acelea pe care le faci și în endpoint-ul pe care ne-ai prezentat ca fiind cel mai util?
Volum de date, ok. Ce volum de date m-a întrebat, ce volum de date în endpoint-uri. Asta e o problemă. Am avut destul de mult JSON servit acolo, atât de mult încât aplicațiile de mobile le dura destul de mult să-l parseze și să-l servească și să-l afișeze pe ecran. Și noi răspundeam în câteva milisecunde, dura până parsau JSON-ul și l-afișau pe ecran la user, dădea un feeling de slowness. De-aia ne-am mutat unele endpoint-uri în GraphQL, unde clientul poate să selecteze exact ce vrea din payload. Nu trebuie să-i servim noi cu REST. Mă rog, și REST are soluții la asta, dar restul nostru servea toate chestiile, servea un JSON mare de tot. Acum nu pot să-ți dau exact numerele, dar era atât de mult încât era slow parsatorul de JSON de pe mobil. Alte întrebări? Scuze, spune.
Dacă fac un hello world în Ruby, cât de mare e artefactul care e generat? Bănuiesc că îți dă un fel de sau ceva, plus câtă memorie consumă dacă vreau să chestia tot server.
Nu știu să-ți dau ultimele statistici. Aplicația asta e foarte mare. Deci aplicația asta are o grămadă foarte mare. Ok, nu e foarte mare, dar are o grămadă de dependențe. Suntem destul de atenți cu dependențele care le adăugăm și așa mai departe. Și ai văzut că nu are niciun, are usage destul de decent. Deci nu mi-aș face griji de asta, serios. Aș zice că e undeva comparabil. Probabil la Hello World e undeva comparabilă ca o aplicația ta clasică de .NET, să zicem, MVC. Numai că e...
Pe mine am fost multă vreme pe JE cu Glassfish.
Nu.
Și totul fain că ai tot server și așa, are 100 de mega nefăcut.
Da, nu, vorbim.
Biblioteca Java și atunci cumva chestia pe mine gând a fost ok.
Nu, vorbim de alt cu Java vorbim de alt order of magnitude. Acum am uitat să zic, la C# am destul de multă experiență și cu Java și cel mai bine ar fi să folosiți Kotlin, dacă chiar vreți să folosiți în limbajul ăsta, dar nu. E puțin, e cu totul alt feeling. Și când vine vorba de tooling, toate lucrurile sunt snappy, toate lucrurile de feel natural. Proiectele de Android care le facem pentru Reasig mă omoară compile time-ul. Adică există echipe, am lucrat în echipe care erau echipe de ingineri speciale să optimizeze build-ul pentru Java. Să optimizeze Gradle files și build time-urile pentru Java. Come on. Câteodată așa se simte. Zi, Radu.
Endpoint pe care ni l-ai arătat era asynchronous by default sau era synchronous și...
Păi web e synchronous, nu? E un web, se așteaptă să vină răspunsul. Acum, în interiorul lui, tu poți să paralizezi chestii, nu? Cel mai multe chestii, cel mai mult timp îți ocupă I/O-ul. Păi, le paralizăm unele dintre ele, dar nu trebuie tot timpul să facem chestia asta. Okay? Dacă o să vrem să stoarcem performanță, oricum e super ușor de făcut cu use case-urile la care ți le-am arătat înainte, numai apenduiesc acolo și zic să fie async. And there you go. It's async. Și la sfârșit se face cumva un join pe ele și așteaptă să se termine toate async request-urile. Da.
Aplicațiile scrise în Ruby la care ai lucrat sunt monolitice în mare parte sau?
Cum vă ziceam că în viața fiecărui developer vine timpul să facă functional programming, la fel în viața fiecărui developer vine timpul să facă microservicii. și le face, nu, că asta e. Am făcut microservicii în Ruby. Eu, dacă e să mă întreb pe mine, acum prefer Ruby versus Rails. Rails-ul, dar pentru chestiile care îmi trebuie mie, pentru API-uri, pentru chestii care le fac eu, Ruby și cu încă câteva librării pe care, dacă ți le spun, nu contează, sunt perfecte în mintea mea și ca sweet spot așa dintre productivitate și rapiditate. Da, el înaintea ta, scuză-mă, nu știu care e ordinea.
Sună foarte bine. Mai angajezi?
Da. It doesn't really matter.
Just used to English.
Ah, okay. Sorry, man.
I speak Romanian too, but
You should have said that.
so right now I'm learning cloud computing, so I'm trying to do ABC, and I was wondering how you can Ruby be implemented in cloud, like
It's everything is Dockerized now, so that you get the Docker image, you can deploy it anywhere. Yeah, I can deploy it. Yeah, I can deploy it. So right there, as I showed you previously, we deploy it in a Kubernetes cluster, and it basically it's well, there's a bunch of magic that the DevOps cat can tell you about it, but it scales.
people who already use Ruby in cloud. Like
There's a bunch of people that actually use Ruby in cloud, and there's do you know about AWS Lambda?
yes.
You can write Lambda expressions in Ruby, and I have insider knowledge that there is a bunch of tooling in Amazon that uses Ruby, because I own an Amazon laptop. But I can tell you about it later. Cool. Guys, yeah. I'll be there in the networking session if there are no more questions. Glad to talk to you about any scalable applications. Thanks a lot.
Mulțumim mult, Calin. Acum vom merge la o sesiune de networking, pizza, sucuri și după aia și un pub. Nu ne-am hotărât unde, dar vorbim. Mulțumim mult că ați venit. Și dacă vă trimite Meetup un formular de feedback, ne-ar ajuta foarte mult să ne spuneți ce părere ați avut, că să știm și noi ce îmbunătățim. Da. Ok, păi ne auzim.